Inauguration Day 2025, and we are surrounded by grifts by the President and the First Lady. What might seem shocking in terms of the sort of the brazenness of the kind of robber baron kind of acts of a new supposedly democratic president, what we're seeing is a sort of reduction to the absurd of a social order that has been leading to such consequences. And I want to focus on that from an economic perspective in this short video. And what I want to get at is this idea with crypto that that what we're seeing is sort of a violation in these crypto grifts. And if you don't know much about cryptocurrency and the grifting that happens through them, the sort of con that is often perpetrated, what you have is this idea that cryptocurrency is this new form of economic wealth through changing the narrative around currencies, from ones that are nationalistic and sort of owned by a state bank of some kind. So you're moving away from something like the US dollar or the British pound to forms that are supposedly neutral and governed by rules, a sort of entirely rules-based order that is purely systematic without any kind of potential ownership associated with it. And so the rise of things like Bitcoin have continued, and it's still around many years after its launch and increased in value. And the hope, the sort of typical utopian hope that technology fosters in its infancy, is that cryptocurrency would both allow for much greater accountability in terms of who has money and where it goes. All money would be traceable ultimately. It's so accountability and sort of neutrality that goes along with it, that what's not being funded is the sort of imperialistic, defense empire of, the defense industry and the militarism that goes with the value of global currencies. Now, that's the utopian dream. The reality that has come out of it mostly has been that influencers, people with a lot of social capital, have tried to transform that into economic capital by the use of what have been called meme coins, coins that are developed, currencies that, digital currencies, that ultimately have nothing behind them but the sort of social capital that an influencer can drum up. Now, in the vast majority of these cases, what happens is an influencer cooks up a scheme whereby to launch this new coin, this new currency, pumps a lot of hype into it, and people start investing and thinking that somehow they're joining a community, somehow this number represents something tangible, and it goes on to hopefully grow, and then they can sell for a profit when the right time comes. Now, what almost always happens is that the creator of the cryptocurrency pumps it up big, and then they do this classic, what they call a pump and dump, or they pump it up and then do what's also called a rug pull, whereby they sell off all their stuff, the value plummets because all of a sudden you get this massive sell-off because the founder typically owns the vast majority of the percentage of the shares of this thing. So the value's gone up and the creator's like, great, I can cash in on this. They cash out. Now the value plummets and it triggers a big sell-off. And most people are, end up with very little to show for it at the end, while the person who invented it, the insiders and some computer programs called snipers that get in instantly right at the beginning, that's where the money happens. And so what you ultimately get is a form of wealth redistribution based on social capital, based on trust. You have this idea that an important person is building up trust. People invest trust in that through transforming dollars into coins of some fake currency, and that somehow that's going to produce something good. But in the end, what you have is the dump. The famous person ends off scot-free, more wealthy than before, and all of their supporters now have egg on their face. I think that's a beautiful picture of what society looks like. Rather than this being a sort of evil transformation of something that was once good, the narrative that money once had value, even if that was linked to a gold standard. The truth is, and I'll do another video on this, money has never had value. There's no such thing as intrinsic value. There is only social value. Nothing has value unless somebody wants it. And how do we get to want something? Through a process of mimetic desire. I want something because you have it. I want this because you have that. Just look at the way children operate. If there are 20 toys in the room and 2 children, after a while there will be a fight over one toy that has been deemed the most valuable because of this rivalry that happens. So within that, what we can see is a brilliant revelation of the truth that's been out there for millennia. Since the invention of coined money, way back in the 600s BC, money has always been a myth. And it's always been a myth tied to a belief in power and influence. It's always been a way to try to transform what is essentially social capital into a form of real value. But there is no real value there. There has always and only ever been the social capital. And what we see in sort of the political arena, whereby you might invest other forms of social capital, of your allegiance, your loyalty, these kind of things into some other person. Now what you start having happen is, that person gets in power and they're not as loyal to you as you were to them. So what happens then? Well, you end up again with egg on your face. You get sent into war and your loyalty is proven on the battlefield. And guess who's not there leading from the front? The great and glorious leader who is happy to send you to your death and happy to not be there in order to grow their empire. What we have in these meme coins is a brilliant distillation of the logic of how human society works. It's a brilliant distillation because it's so blatantly obvious what's happening, and yet people keep going along with it. It is lamentable in some ways that the presidency of the United States of America has been turned into little more than a scheme for grifting, making money and showing that the loyal people who are loyal to a person are the people that get most taken advantage of. But this is just the reality of how bullying works and how social capital works. The powerful abuse the less powerful, and more often than not, the less powerful ask for more. In a weird aspect of the way humans operate, often the people who are abused turn out to love their abusers and think that they can change their abusers. You can't change your abuser. You cannot change the boss. The boss will not be changed, because to get to that position of power, to receive that amount of social capital, has already come at a point where somebody has already decided that the people who give them that social capital are not worthy of an equilateral investment, right? Trump, or whoever is the person we might talk about, whatever crypto bro we want to talk about, they have deemed that you as their follower, you as their investor, are not a valuable person, that you're not creating a unilateral relationship, or you are creating a unilateral relationship of a giver and a receiver. It's not the kind of a gift that you would give at Christmas to a loved one, where when you give the gift, you expect in return not just a gift, but the fostering and development of a relationship that goes both ways. And this is the sad irony about power. And money is always power. There's no difference. Money is just and economics is just a big itself, attempt to mask the fact that it's all power. It's all social capital transference. And what we have then is the people who get power cannot, by definition, value the people that are giving them that power to the equal degree that the people giving that power value them, right? No one has the capacity to do that. And that's just the logic of politics. That's the logic of economics. And to call this good, to think that we ought to be ruled by a world in which politics and the market should dominate our life, that's an absurdity. That's an absurdity that legitimizes what, in its logical essence, in its radically clear distillation is clear to us that power is nothing but abuse. The gaining and maintaining of power, through whether that be through influence of any kind, is a form of gift-taking without reciprocation. Yes, you could modify that. There are certainly worse people. There are better people. There are people that feel a moral obligation to give back to their nation if they're a national leader. They feel a moral obligation to do their best for their people. But they're going to do so in a generic way. And they're going to have to deal with stakeholders and coalitions. And they're not dealing with you personally. And they don't know you personally exist generally. And they don't have your personal best interests in mind. And they cannot love you. So in all this, I think this, this theater of the absurd that we see now in American politics is this wonderful distillation that could not be a clearer contrast with what Jesus teaches about the kingdom of God, where you cannot have two masters of God and money. You cannot serve any cryptocurrency. Why? Because God is the one who loves individuals, and God is the one who not only reciprocates value, but is the one who initiates that process of investing his own death in your life, right? That is the Bible's definition of how the household, or the oikos, is run. And so the oikonomos, the household law that governs the house of God, is one in which the great leader is not the one who sits back and receives praises from anonymous people, who's lifted up to power off the backs of people who have given their lives in combat. No, this is a leader who initiates the entire proceeding by the donation of himself and his life for you. And the call of this kingdom is that you would go and do likewise, that you would go and offer your life up for others. And you can see the logic of this. What's the economic logic of this versus cryptocurrency? Rather than radical anonymity and systemic neutrality that, of course, doesn't exist anyway, what we see in Jesus' logic and the kingdom of God logic is you're developing an economic model on radical love that is always reciprocating, but it's reciprocating by initiating the gift. Rather than waiting to receive and then being expected to reciprocate, it initiates the gift giving. It initiates investing social capital in others, often in others who don't have any social capital. And in this way, you see that Jesus is promoting a radical redistribution, not just of wealth and property. That's too small of the way to think of this, right? Jesus is imagining that his people would reinvest and invest their whole lives in the development of an entirely different way of understanding how humanity and the whole planet ought to work. Now, the mature people are the gift givers rather than the gift takers. They are the one who accept no sacrifices on their behalf, but offer themselves as a living sacrifice. They seek the good of others above themselves. And in doing this, we can imagine what kind of economic reality is created. Wealth is obviously decentralized. People are loved. They all are invested in processes, rather than people being disempowered because they've given all their power and money to the people who ask of it. Now we have people who, the most mature of them, the best and brightest of the kingdom, are the ones who are the most giving, and the ones who accept the least number of gifts from followers and hangers-on and things like that. So, in conclusion, I think we have this wonderful period of time during an absolute abomination of day one of a presidency that has already started with a total violation, not just of American principles, but of kingdom of God principles, and the idea that it's a law and order presidency when the whole thing begins with a con job. Now we have crystal clarity. We have the reduction of the absurd. The emperor has no clothes. There is no such thing as money. There is no such thing as wealth. There is no such thing as power. All there is people giving that stuff to one another. And the more that we believe a person is worthy of it, usually the less they deserve it. The more somebody demands allegiance, the further away you should run from them. These are lessons of the kingdom of God, and I hope that you will be inspired to look into what Jesus Christ talks about as the complete and utter distinct thing that we're seeing on the national stage right now. Many of these thoughts are derived from a book I published back in 2016 with Cascade called Plundering Egypt, a subversive Christian ethic of economy. And that book is available anywhere books are sold if you like what you heard and you want to see more about this contrast between the kingdom of God that Jesus preaches and the kinds of beliefs humans have about money, both present and in the past, and see the sort of development of how money is played into the way that humans make society and construct the ways we think about the world. I obviously recommend checking out that book called Plundering Egypt.